And, keep in mind, I was eating a ton of tofu, a ton of tempeh, consuming a bunch of protein powder, like a lot of processed ingredients that if you think about it, they aren't naturally created of the earth, that eating meat equals being violent. And when they're naturally grazing across all these grasslands, they're dropping all of this dung on the ground. I really think in that way, eating meat can be one of the most spiritual things we can do that continuously keeps us in connection. So where do you want to energetically and physically circulate your money?
Hello friends, thank you for tuning in here. Welcome to this very in-depth video. You can listen to it like a podcast, or if you're watching it, I put a lot into the actual visuals to make it enticing because there's a lot of education, a lot of rabbit holes we get into that are all about regenerative agriculture and just our connection with meat and harmony with nature, and then also connection to the divine. So if you are watching it visually, maybe take out a notebook, take any notes that hit home for you, and then go on your own rabbit holes. This topic is really the epitome of where so much of my passion and spark for sharing knowledge in the world around this specific topic, our journey with food, the food system, the supply chain, most importantly, our connection to the earth and then the soil, and then ultimately the divine energy that is flowing through all of us. We can even call that all God. So thank you so much for tuning in here and enjoy the video.
What I really want to break down today is the link between eating meat and spirituality, or your spiritual path and journey to create harmony within yourself, but also the earth, and continuously really giving back to the earth that we live in. Spirituality, you can think of it as your journey to coming home, coming to your truth, coming to self, and take that one step further, you're coming and connecting with God and creating union, your connection with divine spirit. However that best resonates with you, it's going to look different for literally everybody, because I believe it's a journey in this lifetime that we are continuously figuring out and connecting with and discovering and exploring for ourselves. Now, when it comes to meat is something that has been demonized for years and years and years. I specifically come from a culture and country that really looks down upon eating beef. The cow is such a sacred, holy animal, so it's an absolute no-no to eat and consume beef. There are other cultures and religions that exclude pork completely out of their diet. Now, what's happened with the cultures having a big influence on what meats and animal proteins to eat and not eat is that it has resulted in misconceptions and myths and kind of these built up stories of how meat is bad for you. And of course, veganism and certain other diets have amplified that. I am by no means saying any religion or culture is wrong, and I think ultimately it's whatever your spirituality, whatever that connection, whatever resonates for you, and then linking that with how can I reflect my belief system, my personal journey and path of coming to truth, how can I reflect that in what I eat? We hear so much about what we consume is, continuously going to affect our health and also our connection with spirituality. I refer a lot to yogic philosophy, and one of the reasons is that I just love that it's a philosophy. It's meant to be interpreted, it's meant to be explored, and trial and error. We're meant to take these concepts of yoga and see how they feel for us, and continuously come back to the pillars of yoga, the limbs of yoga, and see how we can continuously become and connect with our most divine selves, and ultimately with oneness or God, if that is what resonates with you. If you're familiar with yoga, you've probably heard of the term ahimsa. Ahimsa kind of translates to non-violence. Now, what I have, seen interpreted from the yoga community over the years is that eating meat equals being violent, which is not really the case at all, and it actually kind of looks at it as very black and white. It actually doesn't even take into account for the fact that for many people to even consume the vegetables that they're eating, many insects and animals have to be killed or harmed in some way in order to protect the plants. So it really goes to show that, no matter what food you're eating, it's not the specific kind of food. It's not just all kinds of beef beef or all kinds of spinach that are either you're harming an animal or you're not. It's really so much more nuanced than that. And that's what's really gotten me down this rabbit hole. So a little context, I was vegan, eating a plant-based diet for almost 4 full years. The biggest driving factor for me was the environment, and it always has been. I feel so connected with this earth. Hearing how detrimental meat is for the planet, the deforestation involved, the amount of land that's needed to raise cattle, all of it was really convincing me that veganism was the way to go. And the thing about science is that, science is incredible, and science does give us so much information, a lot of it being very factual and proven of why something is the way it is, why it may be good or why it may be bad. But the thing we don't realize is with science, like specifically research and studies, they can only happen when there is funding. So a lot of funding is going to be biased. I don't typically like to go down the path of saying everything is agenda, there's darkness in everything, but there is somewhat of an agenda with a lot of things because we live in a world that is capitalistic. Even though there are many companies that are doing a good thing and have a good mission, everyone is also just trying to survive. And so to support them, not just putting information about a product and selling it, but they need to back it up with evidence and studies to prove that. And it's not necessarily just saying these are all the benefits of why veganism is good, but it's also going to have studies generated to show why meat is bad. And so, for me, having gone through so many diets, you continuously come to this realization of everyone wants to make it so black and white. And so with veganism or just plant-based eating, that movement definitely has created a lot of negativity around meat or misunderstanding. It's that blanket statement of plants are good and meat is bad. What actually really pulled me out of that spiral of being plant-based and vegan, and keep in mind, I was eating a ton of tofu, a ton of tempeh, consuming a bunch of protein powder, like a lot of processed ingredients that if you think about it, they aren't naturally created of the earth. They have to be heavily processed, and they are actually supporting monocrop agriculture. Monocrop agriculture is when one single crop is being farmed and grown for acres and acres and acres, and sometimes even miles and miles and miles. And that's actually unnatural, because if you think of an ecosystem naturally has several different types of crops, several different types of animals coexisting with one another. Actually, the only real crop that you can see for miles and miles and acres and acres and acres is usually grass or grasslands. And with the grasses, it just makes sense that cattle are grazing on the grasses, but I will come to that. So when I was starting to get more information questioning plant-based eating, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the research, and I started to look into it. And it's not necessarily that all meat is good, so I don't want a blanket statement that either. But when you are eating meat that is properly and consciously raised, it can actually be not only amazing for you, but really be working in symbiosis with the earth, giving back to the soil. So I'm gonna break this down even further. There's something called regenerative agriculture. And with regenerative agriculture, think about the word regenerative. It means healing or self-healing. Veganism and plant-based eating focuses a lot about sustainability. And sustainability to me is almost like a little bit of a scarcity mindset. It's kind of like we have limited resources, so how much can we sustain and hold on to this? Whereas regeneration is this idea of, no, we're abundant. We are self-healing, we're self-regenerating, we can continuously produce, and it's not like we're holding on to this one resource. We're continuously producing those resources. And so that simple mindset was such a beautiful thing for me to realize. But I'm going to get a little bit more sciencey here and break down what that actually looks like when it comes to meat. So if you think about cows, they're primarily eating and thriving on grass. It's something they're doing all day. They're chewing on grass. And this is really that argument of, oh my gosh, cows are taking up so much resources. But when you think about what's amazing for the earth is you want these grasses, these perennial grasses that are creating beautiful, deep root systems in the soil. Soil health is arguably one of the most important things for the earth to thrive and regenerate. There's a big difference from dry dirt to lush, rich, moist, cakey soil with earthworms. And something that actually allows soil to get there is dung. And especially cow dung or ruminant animals, like the dung of ruminant animals. A ruminant animal is an animal with multiple compartments in their stomach, and what happens is when they're eating grass or these very fibrous plants, they are ruminating. They're having the food ruminate in their body. That's why they have multiple stomachs to break down, because if we were gonna have grass, I know wheatgrass shots were a thing a while back, but we needed to use a juicer and a blender and all of that. But if we were to just put raw grass in our mouths, it would actually probably upset our stomachs a lot to really try to break down such a fibrous and intense plant. However, a cow that is meant to break this down, that has multiple compartments in its stomach to chew through, it actually is able to convert and maximize the nutrients that it can derive from these grasses and a variety of other plants as well, depending on the ecosystem that they're living in. The cattle or the ruminant animals, even like bison or venison or elk, sheep, lamb. So these ruminant animals with 4-chambered stomachs are not only absorbing as much nutrients as they can, but their body, with keeping all the food in there, just ruminating, it's also going through this natural fermentation process. Thus, it's creating really a lot of nutrient density in the actual meat of the animal. So how crazy is that the animal is kind of doing all of the plant consumption and breaking down for us, but in return, when an animal is grazing out on pasture and just surrounded in a really nurturing ecosystem, its well-being, its lifestyle is really optimal. It's getting a lot of nutrients, it's living by the seasons, and then ultimately the animal itself becomes very healthy and has a lot of nutrients that we as humans need. I know everyone emphasizes protein, but think about the most natural source of protein. It's animals, it's animal proteins, and it comes from different animal products. So whether it's dairy, but especially meat. I know the dairy conversation is also a little bit nuanced as well. But coming back to the ruminant animals, so the ruminant animals are going through all the grass, and then as they are grazing on different pastures or just natural migration. And fun fact, the bison literally are known for doing this massive migration across the Americas. And when they're naturally grazing across all these grasslands, they're dropping all of this dung on the ground. And when the dung is in the ground, it naturally attracts dung beetles. And I don't know if you've ever observed a dung beetle, but it is so cool. The dung beetles are taking the dung and basically rolling it up into balls and taking it down into the ground. And what they're doing is they're breaking up the soil. The dung, think about it, it's just like fermented, digested plants. So it's adding back even more broken down nutrients into the soil. And now the soil is its own ecosystem. And then add, rains and sun and so many things to that, and you've got such amazing soil. And because the cow, the deer, the whatever has just grazed through, and now they've got the dung beetles are doing the work, the earthworms, everything. And now the soil is ready for the next season to bring back those grasses and create even deeper roots so that there's continuously, more and more green life uprooting and growing. And that's typically why when you learn about regenerative agriculture for animal agriculture, like farming and ranching, they talk about fencing a lot and they talk about pasture paddock grazing, because they need to move the animals so that the grasses have time to rest and then regrow, so by the time they come back, they're ready to be grazed on, because you don't want overgrazing. A lot of times people are like, well, why are all the animals together? But naturally, I mean, bison used to be in the millions together. It's a protective mechanism. It's how they can face storms. It is very primal for these animals to be in herds. So having a cow herd that is regenerating the soil is a really amazing thing. Now, of course, any process where an animal is being killed is going to be pretty sad. What we don't see is all of the animals that are killed from herbicides and pesticides and electric fencing and so much to raise plants. I mean, I have a garden, and literally every time I have my plants shooting up, they are chomped down by bunnies. These bunnies are ruthless. And even when you get fencing and different things, like, these animals are smart. We've got mice, there's raccoons, there's everything, and they can dig through. It's just survival of the fittest. Everyone's out there trying to survive, trying to get what food they can. Okay, so bring that all back to being the consumer, being the person who is trying to eat food in a conscious way, who wants to get their nutrient density and protein and just full spectrum of nutrition through eating meat, but want to do it in a conscious way. So now we know that just eating vegan or plant-based or completely avoiding animal proteins is not necessarily the answer. If you thrive on plants, definitely do that. But also, if you are thinking that just eating plants 100% of the time is equating to non-violence or not affecting nature, that's not true either. I mean, think about it. If you've ever walked into a Costco, even the organic greens, but to have that many of the same exact looking thing untouched with no bites of, bugs and little holes in your leaves, like, that is impossible. So what I have done as I have reintroduced a lot of produce back into my diet, because so I was vegan, plant-based, and then I started to learn about the power of eating meats again. And so I did that transition, but then I also learned a lot of the benefits of eating a little bit more animal-based, and I've even done the carnivore diet for a few months. That I don't necessarily recommend to everybody. There's very specific reasons why people do carnivore or keto, and that can help a lot in weight loss. It can help with food cravings and binge eating. That's a big thing that helped me. It can really help you recalibrate if you are super addicted to sugar or sweets, which I was as well. And it's also a really great way to do the elimination diet. So finding out what foods are actually affecting you, and just in general resensitizing yourself to spices and flavors and the variety of food options that we get here today. So after doing the carnivore diet, that wasn't maintainable for me long term, nor did I find a meaningful enough reason to do it. I think with any diet, when people get attached to it, or they find excitement, or they find community in the diet, it's very much like, I want to do this forever. These are my people I do it with. But I've had several people that I've been vegan with together and carnivore with together, and now there's really a balance of eating everything. It also really comes down to what do you want to eat? If you want to enjoy pizza once in a while, or cookies once in a while, and a few other foods, ultimately the goal is not to just eat in a black and white way, or eat the good things and then feel like you're cheating every time you're eating a food that's not really aligned with your regular diet. You want to build a metabolism and a strong gut environment where your body knows how to break down any food you're putting in your system. And of course, if something's like a low quality, even if it's like pizza or cookies, your body's going to be affected with that. So even now when I'm sourcing food, even those junk foods, I don't really feel like they're junk, because the pizza is like with a fermented sourdough crust with organic tomatoes and really high quality toppings. And if I do cookies, I'm homemaking them with really high quality flour, natural, unrefined sugars, all of the really good stuff. Over time, especially when I was going hard on animal-based eating, I actually was getting a lot of signs with my system struggling, and so personally I had to include a lot more fiber. And now that I have, and also again taking that adjustment period for my body to be able to digest a wide variety of vegetables after taking them out, because that's the other thing, is if you take something out for a long period of time, now your body's getting used to that. So it's all about like easing your body and getting it used to something, but that also doesn't necessarily mean like, let me get my body used to junk food so it can be okay with that. It's really this like conscious approach, and that comes back to our spirituality. So when I get produce these days, I'm almost always buying my food at the farmer's market or the health food store, where I know and I can guarantee these are coming from local farms and ranches. When I get my produce, I literally see so many holes on the produce. I even see dirt on the produce. Sometimes I even see bugs on the produce, and it's definitely not always pretty looking, but very lush, and you can tell it's so rich and truly nutrient dense. I mean, I can bite a leaf and tell there's so much bitters and natural vibrance and richness and intensity of the greens compared to something that I would buy at a Costco or just any other grocery store. And then with meat, so really coming back to, how can we eat meat in a way that feels like truly good for us? Right off the bat, I will say it's an investment. There's literally no way to justify cheap meat. If you think about all of the resources that go into meat, like it has to live at least 2 years if we're talking about a cow, or let's say even 1.5 years if we're going a little bit shorter, and it has to drink tons of water every day, either through a natural water source or the water that ranchers are bringing the cows. There needs to be irrigation in some cases, because through climate changes and just the world not being set up and being so far from regenerative agriculture, luckily more and more people are doing this, so we're moving towards that again, but we're still far from it where it's normal to just look to our nearby ranch or farm that is regenerative, that we know, this is like really truly animals having tons of space to graze, and the farmer or rancher is doing it the right way. So doing your research, understanding that, you are going to be investing in this, and it is a price that is so worth paying, because again, it's not just for yourself and your health, but it is supporting the earth. It is supporting the right kind of jobs in this society. Doesn't it make so much sense to support our local farmers and ranchers in the work they're doing? They're doing the hard work, and coming from someone who's worked in the ranching industry for a while, like, it is not easy. It takes a lot. It's hard to be able to not just do the actual ranching, but to market and advertise your meat and make it not just break even, but even profitable, so that the people in the industry are not just struggling farmers and ranchers, but so they can thrive. And then also it's allowing you to feel so divinely connected with your food, where you can really stand behind your food choices and feel really good about it. And ultimately, coming back to spirituality, when you eat your food, especially if you can at least know the ranch or the farm your foods are coming from, then you can kind of feel like, I can give thanks, I can give gratitude to these businesses, to these farmers and ranchers, and I really know where my food is coming from. It's very easy. I would eat tofu and protein powder and beans and a bunch of different vegetables all day, but I had no idea where they were coming from. So I really think if you are consciously sourcing your food, if you're eating regeneratively raised, grass-fed meat, if you are taking the time to go to your local farmers market, connecting with your farmers and ranchers, asking questions, knowing where your food comes from, and really participating in that exchange with your local community, I think that's some of the most beautiful, spiritually connecting actions we can take. Even with money, a lot of times we're just like, money, capitalism, but like thinking about money as a resource that you are stewarding, just like the ranchers and farmers are stewarding land. So where do you want to energetically and physically circulate your money, and how is that going to affect all the other parts of your life, and in general just bring more vibrance and connectedness and oneness to you? I really think in that way, eating meat can be one of the most spiritual things we can do, that continuously keeps us in connection with the earth and with the divine spirit.
Okay, if you are still here, thank you so much for just going on this whole journey with me. I hope you got some good notes, took some good nuggets away from this, and inspired to go down your own rabbit holes and just really see, like, how are you creating this connection with your food, and how can you walk in this world with a way where you feel that consistent harmony with nature, but also the people, and realizing how you circulate your money, empowering different jobs, all of that amazing stuff, which is really about our journey in life, our yoga of life, that continuous journey of coming back to self, coming back to truth. That's what we're really here to talk about and share on here in this channel. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, drop a comment if you have any questions, if you have any recommendations or want any links or suggestions to anything, and also subscribe if you're not subscribed already. I really appreciate it. I want to put out more content around this, but please do let me know if this is your jam. If you like nerding out, if you like going down these rabbit holes with me, let me know. And thank you so much for being here and supporting.